Hi, Pod fans. You know what this is. Max here. If you're watching the video, I've just been for a run, hence my slightly dishevelled state, inspired by Barry Glendenning. But yes, Ruben Amorim has been sacked by Manchester United. As is customary, they waited until about 15 minutes after we finished recording. Ollie says, I'm excited for the emergency voice note at the beginning of today's pod. Depot, voice note time? Yes. Pat says, I can guarantee Max and Co. finished recording Guardian Football Weekly 20 minutes ago. Tommy, I really hope you aren't being woken up for a voice note, etc., etc., etc. Thank you for your messages. You're ahead of us. But, you know, we like it because it's the constants in life. So this pod does discuss Ruben Amorim. And actually what we say is pretty relevant, even if we didn't have the sacking news. We will do a special on this tomorrow. But for the time being, here is the podcast, and it's still good, even if it doesn't have this breaking news. We'll cover that tomorrow. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks, bye. Hello, and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly, and congratulations again to Donald Trump for winning the inaugural FIFA Peace Prize. Has anyone checked, Don Gianni? Before matters of world security, the Premier League. Did Pep get out-tactics by a never-managed a game before, Calum McFarlane? Chelsea changed things at half-time and scored late. 4 points dropped in 2 games. And it's Arsenal who were the ominous ones. A match-winning performance from Declan Rice at Bournemouth. Let's begin then at the Etihad. Manchester City won, Chelsea won. Calum McFarlane, the Chelsea caretaker head coach. What a game to have to take charge of. Rice says, was this graphic really necessary? And it just put it up. Manager head-to-head. Guardiola, games played, including today, 1,011. Wins 723, trophies 39. McFarlane, games, including today, 1. Wins 0, trophies 0. So it does seem a bit silly. But I suppose the interesting thing, Barry, is maybe McFarlane kind of got the better of Pep in this game.
Yeah, I think he did. I think it's a far better result for Chelsea in crisis of a sort than it is for Man City, who've now dropped 4 points in the last 2 games. And I thought it was interesting that in his post-match interview, on Match of the Day at least, Pep took serious exception to the accusation that there had been a shift of momentum in the second half of the game because he hadn't noticed one. But I think everyone else did. And I think the person who asked him the question, I didn't get who it was bang on. But Pep wasn't having that at all. And was at his most condescending in answering the question. But I think Calum McFarlane and Chelsea did a number on him. They rode their luck a bit. Manchester United or Manchester City probably should have put the game beyond them before they had the chance to grab that late equaliser. But the little switches McFarlane made at halftime certainly changed the momentum of the game, and I think Chelsea probably deserved a draw in the end.
And actually, in a kind of reverse, so good of Pep, I think the fact that he completely denied that it changed means that it definitely did change, Seb. That's what I inferred from that post-match interview.
Yes, I think that Manchester City, they never want to be in a position where they're sitting really deep defending a lead. Even when they played Arsenal earlier this season, they defended pretty deep for much of the game, but for some reason, in the last few minutes, they pushed up the pitch and tried to almost look after the ball and take that threat away. And that's what caught them out in the end for that equaliser. We've spoken this season, my belief that Man City would pip Arsenal to the title was this freedom of attack and having an excellent goalkeeper and Haaland up front. Now, the attack was free, but it felt on this occasion, I think because of the injuries, that he didn't put a natural winger on the pitch. Obviously, Savinho wasn't available, Bob's not available, Doku was on the bench. But it did make me think he wanted to control the game in the central area and look after it and keep the ball away from Chelsea. But the one thing about Chelsea is it doesn't matter really how well or badly they're playing. They do have good players and they will have moments in every game. And when they're playing in big games, their young players get really up for the match. And it felt as long as they kept it within 1, because they were on the back foot a bit in the first half, they were going to have their moment in the game. And it's funny even that by the end of the match, the fact that we're talking about McFarlane being in a position where he did do a number on Pep, really, because he changed his system in the second half. He swapped players around. He took off players when he needed to. He recognised the game state. It was masterful. But the one point, because I won't go into all the details of the game because that will take away any point maybe Nick has to come. But I, or maybe I shouldn't feel that way. But I feel that it's interesting that McFarlane, he has a past at Manchester City. And it feels every team, whatever team I seem to be covering, they have a tentacle in Manchester City at some point. It's like they are the foundation for all the coaching in English football at the moment. Even when I did Cardiff, it was the case with them. And Chelsea have it running through their veins and just their players and coaching staff. And I wonder when Pep does walk away from this, if that's probably the thing that he takes the greatest pride from, because that imprint on the English football system will be something, and especially when he takes the England job after the World Cup.
I mean, it didn't sound like it yesterday. It's the only thing I would say. And look, for McFarlane, Nick, which is now he may go on to be the most successful manager of all time. We may never hear of him again. But like it was a really lovely moment at the end where like Reece James is pushing him forward and saying, "Look, this is on you. Well done, you." And it must have been such an odd human experience. I know he's coached matches before, but it must have been a really odd day for him.
You've gone from, I don't want to say nobody, but relative unknown to hero in the space of a week. You know, you're in all the headlines, and as Seb has said, they totally deserved it. I thought his introduction of Liam Delap in the second half made a big difference. Delap did his bustling thing, but with a bit more composure, could have scored, nearly got on the end of a move for the goal. I thought they were getting behind City very easily. Lots of very well executed 2 or 3 pass moves, largely foundering at the feet of Pedro Neto, it has to be said, who got in a lot of good areas and then kept even making no decision or checking back on himself. But no, I think they played it very well. And look, I doubt we're going to be hearing that much of him in terms of a frontline coaching position in the future. We've got, Chelsea's extensive scouting mission for a new manager seemingly coming to an end, maybe even today with Liam Rosenior. But no, what a moment to have on your CV for as and when you may be looking for that senior position.
You have the inside track on Liam Rosenior, Seb.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the best. I work with his dad, Leroy, pretty much every week, and Leroy himself played at, in the top flight for West Ham and Fulham, and a man who's managed himself in the past, so a great foundation for Liam as well. But I always got the sense with Liam when he was coming through, he was a good speaker, he was a good analyst of the game. Players speak really highly of him, and it's been really interesting in the media this week that some of the, say, younger pundits who have had more of a connection, have probably met him, probably spoken with him, have given him really high praise and defended him. Whether we get into the position of management and managing Chelsea in particular, that's something else, and that will be discussed over the whole way. But I felt, I wanted to talk about the idea of, because when I sit next to Leroy every week, his pride in how well his son is doing in terms of the progression and reaching a point that he couldn't reach in his coaching career, but seeing your son do it in many ways is better because you can sit back, you don't have to live that pressure per se. You live a different type of pressure. If it goes through and he becomes Chelsea manager, it will feel like such a huge moment. And we always ask in this country for British managers to get opportunities, but when they get them, we say, are they ready for them? You just have to let things pass, and then you can talk about it afterwards, and we'll see how it goes, because Potter worked his way to that situation and it didn't quite work out for him, and that may happen for Liam in the end, but the foundation is there and we will see. It feels like he is the right manager for that group in a weird way, looking at McFarlane yesterday, see how he was with Reece James, how Reece James was with him. They are young players, and maybe we're thinking about it differently, that maybe young players nowadays quite like a young manager around them. Maybe they feel more connected. Maybe they don't need that older manager to tell them you got your boots on the wrong way. Who knows? But if it works for Chelsea, then we can say that's a masterstroke, can't we? I might be going against the tide here, but under good authority, Leroy's told me that it's Rosenior. And I may be the only person in the media who ends up doing that.
He might know.
And he said, like most people do, they say, well, people just said Rosenior, and, I can't go around correcting everybody, so I'll just go around with it. But because he's told me it personally, I have no excuse now, don't I?
Okay, fine. I look forward to my 2 sons attaining a level of podcasting that I never could in the same way.
I wish Liam Rosenior very well in that job. I think, as we've seen before at Hull and then lately at Strasbourg, he's an excellent coach. He always comes across fantastically, by the way, and seems like a genuinely decent, proper football person. And I'm very pleased to see someone like that in charge of Chelsea, to be honest. But I think we do need to acknowledge the company man / Strasbourg thing, because it just doesn't. And this has nothing to do, by the way, with Rosenior personally at all. This is the situation he has ended up in. It doesn't sit well. Like, he's done a very good job at Strasbourg, backed very well by Blueco, obviously, who own both them in Chelsea. I think they're 7th in Ligue 1 now. I think they were 7th in Ligue 1 last season. Maybe out by a spot, but I think that's about right. And I just think treating a club like Strasbourg of that size as a cab rank for Chelsea players and then managers as big and high profile a post as this. I mean, it's a long and separate discussion, but for me, it's not right at all.
Fans are already mega pissed off with Blueco's involvement in their club, even though Blueco have invested a lot of money. But I wonder if the Chelsea hierarchy are getting the yes man or the company man they think they are, because I don't know Liam Rosenior, but I know he's a very thoughtful, articulate man with a lot of strident opinions, some of which he has aired in The Guardian from time to time. So if Todd Bowley and chums think they're getting a company man who'll do their bidding, I'm not so sure that'll be the case, but we will find out.
Yeah, he wrote an article about Trump, didn't he? So it'd be interesting if he'd been, there to win the Club World Cup, and Donald had wandered up to, take a medal alongside him. More on Trump, of course, later. For City, Seb, look, this is 2 points dropped again, so 4 points dropped in 2 games, slipping a little bit away from Arsenal. It's still a lot of football to be played, but that is not ideal.
And I don't think we could say it's too early anymore. I think we've done that. We're halfway through the season now, so we're starting to look at patterns and take something from it. Of course it's not done at all. Of course Manchester City can go on a run, as they often do, because I still feel they always threaten the goal all the time. And you get the sense maybe Arsenal might have a game where that doesn't happen for them and they drop points. City had only drawn against Arsenal before that draw with Sunderland. That was their only draw this season. So they're used to being in a position where they beat teams, most of the time. So they could get on it. And we look at the fixtures ahead, and we've been doing this all the time. We try to think, that's going to happen, that's going to happen. But we know we can't really do that. I mean, you think Arsenal playing Liverpool this week, Arsenal could win 4-0 because Liverpool implode, or Liverpool could nick it and win the game there very easily. They have good players, as Jamie Carragher said yesterday, So it's going to be interesting. And the fact that Arsenal do have this, it's been a while, relatively, and compared to other clubs who spent a lot of money, that tension will get across to the players at some point. So whether by the time they face them at the Etihad, then that might change things. But I think the thing that has reared its head, which I will say, is what I thought might be Arsenal's problem, and it's probably every side's problem, is injuries and fitness. And we've talked about the Club World Cup. There was a slight legginess about City yesterday. It wasn't a surprise that defenders went off injured because they're playing every week. I'm not saying that City have a small squad, but the number of injuries affecting teams is affecting all the games. And it would be amazing if we could just click our fingers and say everybody had everybody fit for the entire season. What would the table look like? But obviously we can't do that.
I was going to allude to exactly that kind of squad thing, because I think this is the moment now over this sticky and intensive winter period where we are seeing the benefit of the depth and durability that Mikel Arteta has put together. I think at Bournemouth he brought on, off the top of my head, I think he brought on Saka, Jesus, Merino definitely, and I think Trossard. 4 incredible subs. Ebe Eze didn't even get a minute. He hasn't started since the Wolves game a while ago. Isn't really in favour right now. Someone like Ifan Nwaneri, no one near it. Whereas City, for AFCON reasons, for the injury reasons you mentioned, only had Doku really to bring on the other day, and it wasn't a dissimilar case at Sunderland a few days previously either. And I just think it's this period now. If Arsenal do come out of it still 6 points clear or so after the Liverpool game, it will have completely borne out the squad that Arteta has put together and the impact that people thought that might have. I think it's proving quite key.
Yeah, and Barry, Arsenal are, they won at Bournemouth, and Bournemouth were good in this game. This was not an easy game, and Declan Rice had an absolutely brilliant, just everywhere, but like those two sort of Lampardian arriving late finishes. But his whole all-round game was just brilliant.
Yeah, he scored the 2 goals. Obviously, they were both very well taken, and he just seemed to be 5 or 6 Declan Rices on the pitch. He was everywhere, making important interceptions, making important tackles, getting the ball forward, scoring the 2 goals, of course. And he was imperious throughout this game, as was, I thought, Martin Odegaard looked very much back to his best as well. They're 2 young senior players, if you know what I mean, and kept their heads and composure during what was a hard-fought win for Arsenal. Bournemouth didn't make it easy for them at all. Even Gabriel made that uncharacteristic error to give away the first goal, but they didn't panic, and he popped up to score the equaliser to cancel out his mistake. And my only real concern for Arsenal at the start of the season, I think, was a potential lack of mental fortitude. And it was tested to an extent against Bournemouth, and they passed with flying colours, I thought. I'm not sure how much more it is going to be tested, but so far, so good for them.
Yeah, Madueke was excellent as well. And another example of their depth.
Talking about their depth, even like they brought on, as Nick said, Saka, Jesus and Trossard. Kai Havertz was given the day off because they're trying to manage his comeback from injury.
That's nice. Did he go to Blue Water? I wonder what he did. Madueke had a really good game. You wonder if Man City delayed the Semenyo deal just long enough that he would play this game against Arsenal. Fraser Forster has signed a 6-month deal at Bournemouth. Doesn't feel like for like with Semenyo, but let's see what he can do, I guess, out there. Like Bournemouth, the interesting 7, 11 without a win. But in the last couple of the games, they've looked better than that. And on Wednesday, Dr. Tottenham arrive at the Vitality.
To fix all their problems, all their woes. I feel for Bournemouth because every time you see them, they are in games against all the teams in the league. You think they drew with Chelsea. The Manchester United game, which I covered, was the game of the season. And they have this ability to score goals against everybody. And that's with a team that's lost so many key players. What I like about them in certain games is that even yesterday, they're 3-1 down in the game, but they're still going for it. They're still pushing for it. It feels like a Premier League thing anyway to be like that sides don't just throw the towel in. But they just need to turn that corner and get the wins on the board. Because they're picking up points, that's helping to stave off any idea that they're going to drop into the bottom 3. And I don't believe that they would have that threat anyway. I just still think they're too good for that. But you want Iraola to get that win. Obviously, if you're a Spurs supporter, you don't, but you want them to get that win because it feels, again, to back up what they're doing in terms of trying to replace the players that have left and give new players a chance to show what they can do. And we saw that. I mean, Krupi's been one of those clutch players this season for them, scoring. He's going to, by the end of the season, when they do the Premier League season review, Premier League years, he's going to pop up 2 or 3 times in that for sure. I think, the Leeds game, Manchester United, obviously the goal in this game will probably still make the edit, even though they lost the game. So we'll see with Bournemouth. And, of all the bees, the well-run bees in the Premier League, I think they're the one that this season probably people haven't noticed that they've been on this long run. But we still need to give them the credit, the way they compete against the best in the league.
Yeah, and look, if you don't have a good season, we were saying this, about, it's not a bad season last year wasn't a bad season to be bad because of the bottom three were so bad. It felt the same, although we said it about West Ham, and they can't afford to be bad because they are one of those three. AJ says, what if Jacob Steinberg was too positive with respect to West Ham after his 7-minute soliloquy on the disaster there? Wolves' first win of the season, their 20th game. John Bruin called this, we were on the radio with him, if we can't win this derby, it's a really nice way of phrasing this. Both teams going, well, if we can't win this, we are totally screwed. And actually, Barry, Wolves looked really, really good with it was only West Ham caveat, of course.
Yeah, and that is a big caveat. It was a really good weekend for Arsenal, and it was a really, really good weekend for Wolves because they won. All the teams above them lost. And I was thinking they couldn't, could they?
Could they?
I've now looked at
They
how
can.
they could, but they won't. I don't think they will.
Right.
I think they need 2 points a game, or the best part of 2 points a game. Certainly 1.5 a game from here on in. But they played well in this game. But the West Ham caveat can't be stressed enough. They can't play West Ham every week, much as their fans requested that through the medium of song. And I don't think you can overstate how pathetic West Ham were in this game. I don't want to take away from Wolves because when the latest score flashed up and I saw 3-0, I was like, whoa, crikey. I did expect Wolves to beat them. I didn't expect them to be 3-0 up by half time. And you could, when Wolves went 2-0 up, you could almost see the players visibly swell with confidence. Like, wow, we're 2-0 up in a game of football. This is incredible. Started pinging the ball around. That guy, Matthias Mane, was superb, ran the show for Wolves. But West Ham were pathetic. And it's not just that they're a bad football team, but that was a football team that wasn't even trying, that seemed to have given up, thrown in the towel. Jacob had an article yesterday stating that it seems Nuno isn't particularly liked around the ground, which isn't that important, but he seems to have a very distant relationship with his players. He seems to completely ignore quite a few of them. And I thought he was nuts to take this job when it came up so soon after leaving Forest, and he's only won 2 out of 15 games. But I do note they've brought in a player that's his signing, and they're about to bring in another. So does that mean he's secure in his position? It's West Ham, so it's impossible to tell.
Yeah, his ready Brett glow from Forest has definitely disappeared, and he's back to dying Jedi, isn't he? Very much so. It's sort of quite extraordinary, Nick, isn't it? I mean, the interesting thing with this recruitment in January will be is any of it good? Because their recruitment for so long has been so bad, you almost presume if West Ham buy someone, it won't work, is my instant presumption.
Yeah, and they've just spent or are spending, I think, around £20 million on fairly young Brazilian striker from Gil Vicente, I think it is, in Portugal, who has a good record. But I tend to think that in this kind of scenario, the Portuguese market is one that tends to see a struggling English club coming a bit at this time of year. I may be proved wrong, but their recruitment has been scattergun, unthought through, and pretty weird at times for years now. I think we're way beyond the point at West Ham where you point the finger at any manager. They're only 4 points off. It's Forest, I think, at home on Thursday. Forest, who had been on a decent run and you quite fancy to get out of it, have now lost, I think, 4 on the spin. They seem to have had a few stinkers in them. They didn't really show up at Villa the other day. So they're only one result away from that glimmer of hope, and maybe 1 or 2 signings away from it. But just based on all the evidence of the last half decade or so, it's hard to see things, perking up very quickly.
Yeah, Tuesday, that game. Seb?
Yeah, you scared me there because I'm doing that game, and
yeah. Just for Seb's interest, it's tomorrow, mate. Yeah.
I got scared. Also, to one final point on West Ham, they've just sold Luis Guilherme, right, who they signed for 25 million, I believe, and he's barely played for them. He's had injuries. I think he had a back problem. and now they've sold him, I think about 16 million or something. So they've made a loss on this young player. And the whole point of buying those players is that you sell them on for hire if you're West Ham, I think, in that position. And that's just another example of their poor transfer policy.
Yeah, so that is it. Absolutely. We have a pod on Wednesday morning, so we will lead with whatever happens at the London Stadium between West Ham and Forest. But it could be quite a stressful watch for those sides involved.
I think Forest will batter them.
Yeah, I mean that's what I expect. But Forest haven't. We'll get onto them in a bit. But yes, I mean it is West Ham. If you can't win this, that is that is the West Ham way currently, isn't it?
Just when Forest lost against Man City, I thought they played really, really well. I was thinking there's no chance in hell of this lot getting relegated if they can play like this on a semi-regular basis. Even though they lost the game, I thought they were brilliant and I thought they deserved something. I'll be very surprised if they don't beat West Ham quite comfortably.
And they should finish above West Ham given the quality of their squad. There's no doubt about that. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Fulham 2, Liverpool 2. Archie got in touch to say, please refer to Harrison Reed by his full name of the Ginger Iniesta tomorrow. Thank you. Will Jeans from The Athletic saying 514 different players have scored in the Premier League between Harrison Reed's last 2 goals in the competition. Nick, it is an absolutely amazing strike. It's absolutely perfect.
What an incredible hit! And I mean, I heard on a slot afterwards explaining it in terms of Liverpool's setup from throw-ins and stuff like that. Maybe with a bit of a nod to their having ditched the set piece coach a little while back. But I'm sorry, you cannot legislate for that. It's not even a case of having the euphoria of a seemingly 94th minute winner, 95th minute winner, and then switching off. It's just a player who never does this, picking up the ball in an area where he never really shoots from, pinging in the most perfect and clean top corner strike that you will see in the entire season. And fair play, you could see that Harrison Reed almost didn't know where to run. He was kind of like he looked delighted, but he also looked really, really surprised. If you look at his face, and I mean, I think that goes for tens of thousands of us who were watching it, to be honest. But yeah, wonderful moment from a player who has barely played in the league this season. I think his starts have all come in the Carabao Cup, if I'm not mistaken. Barely come off the bench, seemed like a dead cert to maybe go to the Championship this month, maybe still will be. But fantastic. And, Fulham, much as Liverpool improved, I think, in the second half and quickened their passing up, a couple of decent goals. Fulham were well worthy of the point. They're just a team that is ultra competent and stays in games. And even if you feel like you haven't, I don't know how to put it, even if you feel like you haven't seen them for periods in a game, they're always still there. Just not always producing moments like that. It was incredible.
Yeah. He did say he did it in training, but and everyone's like, do you do that in training? I've always liked him as a player. And the ball actually said it just sits up just as he strikes it. It just almost, someone just tees it up for him. It's like, it's perfect.
Well, I just feel like we should dedicate the rest of the pod to Harrison Reed, and I don't think Archie would mind that at all, because you spoke about Iniesta, comparing him to Iniesta. It was like the Iniesta goal against Chelsea, the way he struck it, but from further out. It was just a beautiful goal, and he's got such a great name as well. I can't work out if it's an estate agent's or a lettings company or a financial advisor.
Or clothing, sort of middle-aged men's clothing, isn't it?
Would be on Fulham, Fulham Palace Road or something. Yeah. I get what you're saying, and I think I commentated on his last goal as well. I think against Villa. I might be wrong. It was that long ago. And I remember going to the game against Forest, whenever that was, over the Christmas period at some point. And a Fulham support was saying to me, I'm worried today about, we got players unavailable. We might have to start Harrison Reed, I just think this is how football goes full circle. Even seeing Iwobi yesterday in, I think, Nigeria training with Chukwueze and telling him about Harrison Reed's goal, and Chukwueze's reaction is like, what? What are you talking about? It's just, and I just think that's just magic.
It was quite telling, because when he struck the shot and it went into the top corner, Sander Berg was standing nearby in the penalty area, And he just put his hands to his head in total disbelief at what he'd just seen. And the reaction of all the players was quite telling. They were obviously delighted for him, also completely shocked that he'd managed to pull that off. But I must confess, I didn't even know Harrison Reed was still at Fulham. So
What a
I
way to
presumed
announce it.
he'd moved
Yeah.
on somewhere else.
I mean,
He's
I suppose it is
still
a
here.
salient reminder that all these people that we say are hopeless or whatever are actually really quite good at kicking a football. What did you make of Liverpool's performance, Nick?
I felt in the first half it was the fairly ponderous and slow and slightly turgid stuff we'd seen in their previous game, to be honest. That it's obviously not where they want it to be availability wise. I mean, you had Gakpo ploughing a bit of a furrow up there, didn't you? You've got Salah obviously away. Ekitike, I think it's his hamstring, isn't it? Didn't make it. You've got the terrible injury that Isak suffered, and they just looked very devoid of ideas. They just towards the end of that first half, I thought, started getting a bit of joy in behind down that inside right channel, and I thought maybe they'll get a bit of joy second half. And then, to be fair, they did quicken it up after Harry Wilson's goal, which we had to wait a while to have confirmed, but he's on fantastic form. By the way, we should mention that. We should mention Harry Wilson. He's absolutely on one, and it was another very good finish. They quickened it up. I think they deserved the equaliser from Wirtz, which similarly we had to wait a while for. But I think he'll have been pleased that counted. That's now a couple of goals, I think, and an assist for him in fairly short space of time, and maybe takes the monkey off the back for him a little bit after that investment. I thought he worked very hard and played quite well all game. And then you think they've won it. It was an absolutely delicious delivery by Frimpong, by the way, for the goal from Gakpo, which went in off some part or other of his body. It was very similar to the ball from Gusto, actually, for Man City, from which Enzo scored. Two absolutely wonderfully teased, right-footed, deliveries from there. And I felt, there was enough in that second half, given the personnel, for them to think, okay, we've got a bit of rhythm going. Maybe we'll snatch 3 points here. And then it wasn't to be for reasons that we discussed. But I felt it was, in short, a performance of two halves from them. But we're nowhere near seeing what they can or should be capable of. That's partly because they're just not playing well enough, and partly, I think, because the availability is not great at the moment.
Just on the Wirtz goal, obviously loads of controversy, Seb, about whether that's offside or not, because it didn't quite match up with the way the grass is cut. But there is every chance that the grass isn't cut in perfectly straight lines. I don't know. No one seems to have mentioned this. Maybe the Fulham groundsman wanted to gaslight everybody by just cutting it at a slight angle. But everyone's just convinced that the mown lines have to be exactly straight. That's not... He's not mowing them with like VAR lines, is he? He's just mowing the grass in a kind of straight line. Anyway, I just thought no one's ever made that point.
I've thought that, but no one's ever said that out loud. Yeah,
and I just did, so it's mine. No, you're free to use that.
It was great to see that goal count, because we've had years and years of these offside by a toenail nonsense, and now I think I saw someone put it on social media, like, now we know that level is actually level and should be a goal. And I think that's exactly it. And hopefully common sense prevails a bit more like that in future.
Unless Arsene Wenger has his daylight idea way, which is possibly the worst idea. And anybody who thinks it through and still thinks it's a good idea, like, oh dear, we've lost Arsene. Anyway, Leeds 1, Man United 1. I loved this game, Barry. I thought it was a good fun.
Yeah, it was quite entertaining. Both teams missing quite a few key players, and you saw that the paucity of experience on the Man United bench. They were missing Bruno Fernandes, Harry Maguire, Kobbie Mainoo, Mason Mount, De Ligt, Diallo, Mbeumo, Mazraoui, and Leeds had Ampadu, Joe Rodon, Dan James out. I thought it was a pretty even contest. A draw was probably a fair result. Brendan Aronson apparently is not particularly popular with Leeds fans. I wasn't aware of that, but that is has come to pass in recent times. I thought his goal was very well taken. Bit of a boo-boo by Aiden Heaven, but Aronson, if he's not chasing down what should have been a lost cause, then that goal doesn't happen. I suppose that most of the attention will be on Amorim's quite chippy post-match press conference, in which I don't know whether was promised things that are now not going to be delivered, or if he was told what his role would be and that's now changed. But it certainly seems like him and Jason Wilcox, the director of football at Manchester United, have fallen out. And as we saw at Maresco, these battles tend to end one way. He strikes me as someone who doesn't care whether he gets fired or not. And that was quite a nice way to be, isn't it?
Yeah. Jamie Jackson writing that Amorim's future is in the balance with the head coach's strained relationship with the director of football, Jason Wilcox, a factor in what is viewed as an unpredictable situation at the club. How does Stuart Ripley feel about him? That's the big question. So Amorim said, I just want to say I came here to be the manager, not the coach. In every department, the scouting department, the sporting director, they need to do their job. I will do mine for 18 months and then we move on. I just want to say I'm going to be the manager of this team, not just the coach. I was really clear on that. That's going to finish in 18 months. And then everyone is going to move on. That was the deal. That is my job, not to be a coach. If people cannot handle the Gary Nevilles and the criticisms of everything, we need to change the club. Good news for Gary Neville after Jamie Carragher got a lot of coverage in the Mo Salah situation. What do you make of it, Seb?
It's interesting, isn't it, when managers call out people in the media? Obviously, Gary's an ex-player, but it just shows the traction and influence that these things have and that these things do get through to them eventually. I agree wholeheartedly that he's been given a good contract. He's probably recognised the fact that Manchester United really don't want to sack their manager and pay them out. And so he's got a free pass, really, in his eyes. So he's thinking, I'll stick to my philosophy. If I do get sacked, then the next potential employer knows what I'm about, and that will do me. What I found extraordinary, and obviously when this game was on, I was at St Andrews, so I didn't watch the whole game. But having seen Manchester United several times in the flesh over the last month, it seems to be when you think they're onto something, then Amorim will change it and go against that completely. You think, oh, he's changed his formation, this is working, or he's selecting that player, that's working, and then he'll flip it round. And I've never seen a situation where almost everybody universally was in disagreement about him taking Xerxes off at half-time of the Wolves game, and then we're waiting to find out, was it an injury or was it tactical? And in the post-match interview, straight away he just says, tactical. So it's fueling everybody. And obviously Gary were covering the game with him, and we're doing his podcast after, and I told him, and his face when he found it was tactical, it was just like, it's just not right. It's just not right. This shouldn't happen. And I wonder now, because who is still for him? Obviously there will be players who he's selecting who will be happy he's the manager still. But you look around and just think, any other manager in the league would probably feel they could do better than him right now. And also, most managers would have been sacked by this point. So he seems to know, well, what else can I do to get sacked? I'll just keep going and being myself, and maybe other employers will see this and happy days.
You've got to ask what United are doing, though. What both parties are doing, because firstly, he was appointed as head coach, not manager. That was the announcement. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I may be, but I don't think any of his immediate predecessors were appointed as head coach. He was appointed by Man United in a bit of a departure as a head coach. Now, traditionally, not always, but usually, the head coach is operating within the structure ordained by the club. We are a club that plays this way. You come in, you do that. But the club knew they were getting someone in who would only play 3-4-3 and still wants players for what he described as a few days ago, the perfect 3-4-3. He's still looking for players for that. And the club knew that's what they were getting. So in mid-flight, for Jason Wilcox or whoever to be telling him, we don't want to do it this way, we need to do it another way, from the information we have available to us, that seems very, very strange, and it seems like very, very muddled thinking. It seems almost to me like they did what United have done for the last 10 years and picked the shiniest, accessory, the guy who was doing a good job and getting glowing write-ups at Sporting, and never really thought about it properly. It feels very muddled. It feels unnecessary from all parties, and Amorim is now throwing his toys out of his pram. And I just wonder also whether. It's funny that this has happened for different reasons, but in similar ways with him and Maresca in the space of a week or two. I wonder if, and it's probably not a conscious thing, but I wonder if there's a kind of kickback against the fact that managers have to front up every week and explain these decisions that are being taken by sporting directors, by data gurus, by owners, by people above and around them every single week. And we're not going to hear from Jason Wilcox. He won't be giving a presser in a few days' time. We don't hear from the guys at Chelsea. And at these big clubs where there's such enormous structures now and you have so many high power people making decisions, it doesn't all fall on the manager, who is the one who takes the rap. I think it's just interesting in these two cases that the manager is pushing back a bit, because there's a lot going on above and around them that they really are not answerable for.
While we don't hear directly from Jason Wilcox, I think we do hear from Jason Wilcox. He uses, preferred, favourite journalists or pundits or whatever to get his views across.
Maybe it's personal because he could never fit in a perfect 3-4-3, isn't he? He's in a 4-4-2 every day of the week. To the Hill Dickinson, Everton 2, Brentford 4. Let's talk about Igor Thiago, Barry. He didn't score at all in December. He's now on 14 for the season, though, with this hat-trick, behind only Erling Haaland. And he wants to lead the line for Brazil at the World Cup. And there are so many Brazilian number 9s in the Premier League. You feel like he might be the best one of them.
He was certainly the best one on the pitch yesterday. I mean, what are the odds that Beto and Tierno Barry both score in the same game and Everton still manage to lose it? That's quite something. But Igor Thiago, he's certainly making a case to be the Brazilian number 9 of choice from the English top flight. I'm not sure what the competition is elsewhere, but and he's, while you say he had a dry December, he got his hat trick yesterday. Erling Haaland's having a bit of a dry patch himself at the moment, so it was a really good hat trick. He's a very, very good player. I think a lot of people think Brentford signed him in the summer. He's actually been there since the summer before, but I think he missed most of last season, if not all of it, through injury. But he's really, really good. This was another good win for Brentford. Keith Andrews is making fools of a lot of people who thought the combination of an inexperienced manager and Brentford losing Thomas Frank and several key players would spell doom for them. They're doing really, really well. And it was a bad defeat for Everton. But they're still in that mix, that very congested mix in the middle of the table where one or two wins can send you up towards the Champions League places. But yeah, another good win for Brentford.
Yeah, 4 points between Chelsea in 5th and Crystal Palace in 14th. Brentford 7th. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Villa 3, Forest 1. Seb, you're on commentary for this one. What did you make of it all?
I divided this game into two halves in the fact that, they usually
like
are,
many people do.
Yeah,
football.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's the obvious way to look at a football match. So let's start with the first one, because that's usually the first one. It was the most dominant I've seen a side this season in a half of football. And during the game, I have stats available and I'm looking through things. I'm thinking, Villa have had a lot of the ball here. And I think it was their highest share of possession under Emery in any game. It was the most passes they'd had in opponent's half under Emery. It was a situation where I think Forest barely crossed the halfway line. And yet, as the half wore on, you thought, are Villa actually going to score? They'd only had one shot on target before Watkins' goal. They were so dominant. And we found out, in effect, because of what Deitch said after the game, that was his plan, was to try and just sit off Villa. But what I saw is what Deitch's template is going to be going forward, because we speak about the West Ham game. How is he going to approach that? He cannot play like he did against Villa in other games, because they really will get on his back. You have players who can get on the ball and make things happen. Anderson, Gibbs-White. They even had Bakwa starting today, who's barely had a look in. He's had injuries, but also barely had a look in. And they just didn't get on the ball. They spent the whole half defending. I think Murillo, it took him 10 minutes before he had his first touch. And the game got away from them. But Villa were frustrated, but we know that Villa only score bangers, and they certainly did in this game. Go to the second half to jump forward, and it was frustrating for Forest from a different reason, because they conceded straight after half-time. There were errors in that goal. Perhaps Hutchinson could have tracked Cash. And then all of a sudden they got themselves back into it, and then Villa kicked on again. And then John Victor, who's been on this run of matches for them, and people have been saying, why is he starting over Sells, even though Sells is back, injured himself while being halfway up the pitch. And you want to give as much credit to Villa as you can, but it was really striking how Forest approached this game and how they performed. And maybe Villa didn't give them a chance because Tielemans and Camara were excellent. But seeing John McGinn score his first brace ever in the Premier League was something where you just think, is this more about Forest than it is about Villa today? Even though Villa were excellent and needed to bounce back.
Yeah, it was funny seeing Victor all out. I hope he's all right. But, that McGinn's first touch, you go, I'm not sure where's the goalkeeper? It was a bit like, there was a goal in the Champions League recently where I thought there was a pitch invader, but actually it was Manuel Neuer or something like that. I can't remember who it was. Yeah.
Max, I said on comms, I think I said, where's the goalkeeper? And I went, nowhere as it went in. So I think that
sounds good. But yeah, Sean Dyche said the mentality is there, but you can't keep giving yourself a mountain to climb. Players were switching off to the basics. We've worked on it and shown them, but this is the job. I never expected it to be easy when I got here. As we said, huge game tomorrow for them at West Ham. Simon says, any other Spurs fans secretly praying for Armageddon before the end of the Premier League season? Spurs won, Sunderland won. Barry, they were booed off again. Do you think they'll just be booed off now forever? It's sort of, it just feels so bleak. They were okay in this game for quite a lot of it, but at the end they didn't win, and they're not that exciting to watch.
Yeah, I thought Spurs fans were being a bit hard on Thomas Frank, but having seen their performance against Brentford, and then the way they backed off Sunderland yesterday while in a commanding position, I can coming around to their way of thinking. It's fine playing dour, defensive, unentertaining football if you're winning games. Well, it's kind of fine. But when you're not winning games, then that's not acceptable. It costs a lot of money to go and watch Tottenham or have a season ticket at Tottenham. So you want a bit of bang for your buck. They probably should have won this game. They probably should have put it beyond Sunderland by half-time, but they didn't. And then they sat back, invited Sunderland on. Sunderland took full advantage, although Sunderland's goal was superb, just back lovely. To front, sweeping move, brilliant 1-2 between Brobby and Enzo Lefebvre. And Sunderland rescued a point, and I think they probably deserved it. They're coping very well with the absence of so many key players at AFCON, and Spurs got booed off again. And then I saw a picture on social media last night, or someone put it in a WhatsApp group I'm on, of a gang of Sunderland fans going back home on the train, and they were all tucking into a curry on the train, which has to be well beyond the realms of acceptable behaviour.
I think you're right.
Stinky food on a train. Come on, lads. You're letting the slide down.
I did like Mike saying on the radio, I swear I just heard that Mr. Blobby had equalised against Spurs. I had to pull over. Brobby. Yeah. Rumour that Sunderland are in for Fermin Lopez from Barca for 70 million. I mean, that can't be real, but, it sounds mad, doesn't it? Quickly, Newcastle beat Crystal Palace 2-0, and Brighton beat Burnley 2-0. Nick, any strong thoughts on either of those games?
Not especially in only that Burnley it's starting to look quite a lot bleaker for. I think it's at 6 points off Forest now. There's not really much sign of spark from them after a decent start to the season, really. And Brighton, on the other hand, are 10th, playing some quite good stuff. But actually, this answer's terrible, so maybe don't use it.
December really is the cruelest month for Brighton. Since Fabian Hurtzler got there, I think they played 12 games across 2 Decembers, and they haven't won any of them. And this win was their first in 7, and they're still 8th. So make of that what you will.
Yeah. On the Newcastle Palace game, I think, Newcastle are good at St James's Park. Their Palace do look knackered. They had a great chance at 0-0, Will Hughes, but Palace look really tired, don't they?
Yeah, you feel for them. And as we mentioned earlier about injuries and fitness and trying to keep teams together, trying to make the balance. And I think across the board, we're seeing whether sides can ride that or not. Newcastle have their own problems in that sort of situation. I think Lewis Miley playing out of position was excellent in that game. And, that's so important for Eddie Howe as well. But for Glasner, you do wonder, don't you? Because when the Brennan Johnson signing was made, and you think Glasner's played a big part in maybe getting him, but whether he's going to be there at the end of the season is another matter. It's interesting how those things work out. With Palace, I think their mindset now is going to be, can we try and win the Conference League and just keep yourselves, middling around mid-table? Because by winning the Conference League, you qualify for Europe again. And that's going to be the interesting balance. Will we start to see a flip towards the back end of the season where they think, right, okay, we might rest some players in the Premier League? We don't see it that often from teams, but this could be a season where we do see it.
On to other matters, Craig says, with all that's transpired in Venezuela, has anyone reached out to console Gianni Infantino? He'll be beside himself with regret. And not any FIFA Peace Prize, but the inaugural one too, poor chap. Pudsey says, you can't blame Gianni. No one could have predicted that the famous self-proclaimed war ender would unilaterally bomb yet another country. Totally out of character for Donald Trump. Over the weekend, flippant questions aside, Nick, the USA carried out airstrikes on Venezuela. They captured its dictator, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife.
Kidnapped, I think, is the word you're looking for, Max. Not captured,
okay, yeah. Okay,
kidnapped. Widely reported.
Donald Trump was awarded the FIFA Peace Prize last month, whatever its worth is. And he said his New Year's resolution was world peace. How are FIFA tangled up in this, Nick? Or is this one of these things where, Gianni will just say, it's all fine, nothing to see here? Like, it's embarrassing. Is it embarrassing for FIFA, or is it past that?
It's intensely embarrassing. Like you saw when they were doing the ceremony to give Trump this award, such as it is, the spiel that they read through beforehand about the wars he had supposedly stopped, which we all know after a fact check or two will be dubious or spurious at best. They are hitching their colours to a mast here, a political mast, and it is blowing up and could blow up further in their faces. And
sorry, let me rephrase that question, Nick. Not should they be embarrassed, because they should be, but will they be embarrassed is the question.
I think a lot of people in FIFA will be embarrassed and are embarrassed. I think presumably they were embarrassed when he got the prize, right? I mean, that. Yes, I think I think there is embarrassment within FIFA at this. Whether the guy at the very top is embarrassed is another matter entirely. But I was with I was with about 3 weeks ago. Very well-known football figure Zvonimir Boban in Zagreb. Did a big interview with him that went out on the site 10 days or so ago. And Boban, as we all know, massive legend on the pitch, national hero in Croatia for his actions before and around the Yugoslavian war. Then became a very influential and respected football administrator. He held key policy roles at FIFA, which he held for about 3 years before getting a job at Milan, then another at UEFA before he fell out with Alexander Chefrin on a point about the extension of Chefrin's term limits. So he sort of burned brightly and briefly in 2 very key senior positions. Don't agree with everything that he did. He was very pro pushing VAR. He was very involved in the new Champions League format, although he toned it down from a 10-game format. So he's been a very influential figure in football, and I thought it was very interesting to hear what he had to say about this as somebody who has been a top player and then has had a top role in football administration, and this just summed it up for me, that a football person, a real football person who has been at the top of FIFA can say this. I'll read out some of it, if that's all right. He called it disrespectful and irresponsible. I couldn't watch it. I was surprised that he started to think in this way. Too political, obsessed with the politicians and all those stories. At the beginning, it wasn't like this. Later, it has started to go in a different way. Gianni isn't aware of what he's doing to himself and FIFA now. It shouldn't be a political organisation, but now you're doing this. It's shameful. None of this can deny the good things he's done, but on the other hand, it shows that the way is lost. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for FIFA, sorry for him, and sorry for football. And I just wonder, there's only a Boban, one person, but when somebody who's been in his position of influence is saying stuff like this about his former boss, who he has got a lot of time for and done some good work with in the past, surely something doesn't feel right, does it?
No. I mean, it didn't feel right when it was given out. It feels even worse now. Lord knows what happens between now and the World Cup starting. But obviously, we will keep covering it. Barry, Fitbar, not a good weekend for Wilfred Nancy.
No.
Another one.
This was his first, and I suspect last, Glasgow derby as Celtic manager. Like Seb, I think I would like to separate this game into two halves.
Yeah, you can.
The first in which Celtic took the lead through brilliant goal by Yang Hyun-yun, should have been at least 4-0 up by half-time. But, as is the case with Celtic these days, couldn't put their chances away and were only 1-0 up at half-time. So the Rangers were still in the game. Danny Roll identified the problems that Rangers were facing, did something about them. Rangers then took over, dominated the second half, and Wilfred Nancy had no answers for the changes that his opposite number had made. And Yusuf Kermeti, formerly of Everton, he scored twice for Rangers. Mikey Moore, on loan from Spurs, added a third. I mean, one of the goals Kermeti scored was ridiculous. It came from a Celtic throw-in. One of their players was bullied off the ball. Kermeti just ran the length of the Celtic half unopposed. Not sure what Aaron Trusty was doing, but he more or less ushered him towards goal, and Kermeti scored. But at the end of the game and throughout the second half, Nancy just looked absolutely bewildered and at a complete loss to know what to do. And as soon as the final whistle went, he just wandered down the tunnel on his own. It was at Celtic Park. Obviously, what fans were left at the final whistle were not happy. A lot of fans gathered outside the front of the ground after the game, calling for the board to be sacked. And like at West Ham, the problems at Celtic go from the very top down. Wilfred Nancy's just a symptom rather than the cause of the problems they have. And Ewan Murray wrote an article just quite coruscating, and he's a Hearts fan. He should be happy with that result. But just at a complete loss to understand the logic that led to Wilfred Nancy being appointed to a position that's clearly he's not ready for.
Sure. And I think he did that press conference after we did the Thursday pod. It was that was more entertaining than quite a lot of football matches I've watched. I do recommend it. But, if I say I hope he wins the league, maybe I'll get another front page in that Celtic fans website of me holding a golf club saying Max Rushton thinks. Anyway.
Max Rushton comes out to bat with a golf club.
Yeah, I do. Nick, you've got 15 seconds on Ipswich Town.
Oh, Ipswich Corner is back. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's
And that's your time.
yeah.
Thank you so much. No, carry on.
Great. I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say. Weird old season up until yesterday's postponed game at Portsmouth would have been up in the top two for pretty much the first time this season. No, it's a weird one because, and this is a more sort of existential thing for parachute clubs in general, I think. So I might extend this to 16 seconds. No one seems to be enjoying it too much among the fan base. There was kind of sort of giddy back-to-back promotions 2 years ago, and now that promotion seems to be simply business, get it done, get up there, bottom line. There's quite a lot of angst and every single point dropped is moaned at, and the players get quite a lot of stick from the support. It's quite a quiet home stadium, so I think that speaks to more how football is now for a club where there's expectation rather than anticipation of pulling off a miracle. But the Championship promotion race in general is looking very interesting now. Coventry, as Seb, I think, may have seen over the weekend, having a bit of a drop-off, but back with a good 4-0 win over Saints, and I think it's going to be a big January window in the Championship. I think this maybe is a division where, rather than what you do over Christmas, it's all about what you do in the window and how you strengthen. I remember 2 years ago, Ipswich went up, but they won one game in 9 over December and January. Then they got Kiefer Moore and Jeremy Sarmiento in and really pushed on. So I think any Coventry fans worried about their current sticky patch might just wait and see what Frank Lampard, who will be backed, we gather, does in the transfer window. I think the prospects for that division will be very much apparent once the window's shut. And I think that was 15 minutes even, and and goodness knows how many seconds.
Yes, in many ways, that wasn't 15 seconds. But we forgive you, Nick.